The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the hosts, guests, and presenters.
All those lights on interstate highways where you have limited access, they'll all go away, and it all has to do with connected vehicle technology. I did a presentation to the Roadway Lighting Committee in Toronto at the meeting in March, but basically what it involves is cellular communication that will be along the road and communicate with the cars to the point that we will get to that day when you don't have a steering wheel, you don't have a gas pedal, you don't have brakes, the car drives itself.
Welcome back to the Restoring Darkness podcast, presented by the Soft Lights Foundation and the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. If you want to donate to Mark Baker's work at Soft Lights, or you want to donate to the production of this show, you simply go to restoringdarkness.com and you click the donate link. You want to donate monthly, I think that's great, but, I think a good idea is just, if you felt like it was worth $20 or $25 or $150 or $5,000 or whatever, I'm going to tell you, we're going to put it to good use. And we're going to produce more Restoring Darkness podcasts. We're going to help, Mark Baker is going to do, if you donate directly to Mark Baker, he's going to continue to work on the stuff he's working at Soft Lights Foundation, and he's got a mountain in front of him. A literal mountain of bureaucracy and red tape and everything else. I'll tell you, he's a good guy. He's going to put it to good use. He's a 501c3, so you get a charitable receipt for that donation. And you can help him out. I want to remind you, my friends out there right now, of Tesla Induction Lighting. So that's in TeslaInductionLighting.com. My producer's going to tell me I'm wrong. What is it, Scotty? Tell me. Just come on the air and tell me. Tesla Lighting Company? Tesla Lighting Co.
Lighting Co.
I always forget the damn name, but you know what? I remember what their products are about, which is the most important thing. TeslaLightingCo.com. They sell induction lighting, and induction lighting was LED's ugly sister back in the day. It was like a mercury light source, but it was highly efficient and lasted really long, but was also a reflected light source and then came in all the different Kelvin temperatures. And so it has totally different characteristics of light than LED, but it has a lot of the same good things like high energy efficiency, super long life, works in cold and heat, all these kinds of things. And Mark and I think this is a good candidate to consider as an alternative to LED if you're having problems with LEDs. And so, we're not saying that LEDs, induction's making this massive comeback, but you know what? I think they could take some market share. They could become a part of the mix moving forward. And so I'd like to invite you to consider them. Go to TeslaLightingCo.com. Thanks for the support, guys, at Tesla. And now, Mark, it's time for the Soft Lights update. What's going on with Soft Lights these days, buddy?
Busy, Michael. Let's just do one topic. Positive and negative. Well, negative first. So we've been working on the LED headlights issue, and in January of 2024, I filed a lawsuit against the Food and Drug Administration because they were not regulating any LED product. And then later in 2024, we had a hearing, and the judge was sort of biased against my lawsuit, so I withdrew that lawsuit. But then I filed a new lawsuit against the Food and Drug Administration and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration for failing to establish and maintain a liaison to test and evaluate LED headlights. It's in the law in America, so they have to do this. So the judge now has took a year and just last week issued what they call findings and recommendations. And I'm just learning all this stuff as I go, but he's called the magistrate judge. So his job was to listen to or to read our case and then make recommendations and findings and then give that to the district judge. The district judge will make the final decision. Well, this judge made the wrong decision. After an entire year, he essentially said the Food and Drug Administration and NHTSA don't have to collaborate, even though the law says they do. So he just let them off the hook. So I discovered that I can file what's called an objection to his findings and submitted that. So I just did this a couple of days ago. I went to the court. It's a federal court, submitted my objections, and then the federal government will rebut that or something and then they'll try to fight it still. But we have now, and then we don't know how much longer that'll be. It could be another year before that judge rules. But so we're not dead in the water yet. So we're going to now wait to hear what that judge says.
So for some reason in my life, Mark, I have had a lot of interactions with courts and adjudicators and bodies and labor boards and human rights tribunals and small claims, Superior Court of Ontario. Usually I'm on the plaintiff side or supporting a defendant. I rarely ever get sued myself. Never, actually, I don't think I ever, no, one time, but it was just because I was one of the people that they just added and then I got my name taken off. But so one of the functions of the court, that it's not the only function, but one of the functions of the court is to actually protect the government. And a lot of people don't understand that. So like if there's an accident in Ontario and we have a healthcare system that pays the bills of everybody, so that if you get injured in a car accident, you go to the hospital and the healthcare system cares for you. And there's pros and cons to that system. This is not the place to talk about which system's better. There's pros and cons. But so the courts look at who is going to pay. Not us, not the Ontario people, not the province of Ontario. This insurance company is going to pay. And you know what? That insurance company's commingled too. You know what? You got to pay too. I know it didn't really work with your policy or whatever, but too bad you're paying. And we're going to keep you away from the town of Markham and the region of York. Right? And so they're trying to look for parties to pay. So they're kind of protecting the government. It's a good function they play. It's not the only function. But what I'll tell you, if you keep working that system with determination and grit, I bet that it'll work. It'll work for you. Because at the end of the day, I believe probably American justice and Canadian justice get a C- or a C+ or something like that. But that's way better than E. You know what I'm saying? And so I think there's a good chance that if you continue down this path, that you will get a justice that will look at this and say, you know what? This son of a gun is right. Let's see it. Let's have a discovery. Let's get the documents out. You know what I'm saying? And see if these organizations are misbehaving a little bit or if they are not being managed properly. It's probably just incompetence. You know what I mean? It's probably not really any kind of negligence or, malice. It's probably just incompetence. They forgot to do it. And now they want to cover it up or whatever. Who knows? But usually it's that. When you're talking about these institutions, they want to do good. The people that work there are probably great people. Great American people work at those institutions. And so you got to keep pushing them so that you get them to that point. Leo Smith is our guest today, and he is the executive director of Reduce Light Pollution in Connecticut. Now, Mark and I really like the sound of that name. He's also the chair of the Connecticut chapter of Dark Sky International. His website is Reducelp. So it's reducelp.org. And he has an Instagram, a Facebook, a Twitter. It's all going to be in the show notes down there. So you can follow Leo. You can reach out to him. I don't know if he wants you to. I'm sure if he has a website, he probably has a form you can fill out, or maybe on one of the social medias after this. If you want to get him, they'll be down there in the show notes. Leo, welcome to get Restoring Darkness. Yeah. I almost said get a grip on lighting. What are you guys doing in Connecticut? Like, how many people you have in the organization? Is it just you? Did you just start it? What are you working on, and how are things going?
Well, the Dark Sky has about 400 members in Connecticut, and Reduce Light Pollution in Connecticut is really focused on other organizations, Audubon, Sierra Club. So you have different environmental groups, astronomy clubs, things like that, where these organizations can add weight to political or legislative efforts.
And you're kind of acting as a go-between between the shared kind of interests of several different nonprofits who have a stake in night preservation and darkness restoration.
There's a lot of shared interest. We have a group here in Connecticut called Lights Out Connecticut that's primarily focused on bird migration and avoiding bird crashes and things like that. It's a pretty big effort. But that's different than, let's say, astronomers who are concerned about light pollution because of their inability to see the stars at night.
Mm.
So there's different aspects of light pollution that affect different groups. Even energy conservation, we waste a tremendous amount of energy with outdoor lighting, and technology is changing to the point that we are coming into a new era where there will be a technological change that will radically transform the need for street lighting. And you will have a situation where street lighting that's for security purposes in high crime districts, yes, you'll keep that. Or for pedestrian areas and urban settings, yes, you'll keep that. But all those lights on interstate highways where you have limited access, they'll all go away. And it all has to do with connected vehicle technology. I did a presentation to the Roadway Lighting Committee in Toronto at the meeting in March. But basically, what it involves is cellular communication that will be along the road and communicate with the cars to the point that we will get to that day when you don't have a steering wheel, you don't have a gas pedal, you don't have brakes, the car drives itself. When that day comes, all of those lights will go away because you no longer need to have extended vision for the driver, which was the whole theory behind why you
Mm.
needed streetlights. You won't need that anymore. And that day is only about 15 years out.
That is a interesting prognostication. um, the so you, I'm just gonna like you kind of blew my mind there. I want to comment on something that's might seem off topic, Leo, before I steer back right into what you said very quickly. Okay.
Sure.
So my belief, so a lot of people have concerns about tracking. And so my kids are like, Dad, does everything on my phone, is there somebody watching it? I said, there's not somebody watching it, but just consider yourself having a conversation in the mall at a food court. You know, when you're on your devices, or if you choose to connect to the grid, you're in the commons. This is not you're not owed privacy there. You know, you're owed privacy when you're speaking to your wife in your house and whatever. And it is creepy that your phones listen to your conversations. There are elements of this that are creepy and a bit of an invasion. But whatever we're doing and connecting to these grids, we're in the commons. And so people that have privacy concerns or whatever, you don't have a right to privacy in the commons. You have to behave a certain way in the commons. And the internet is largely a commons. It is a commons. Now, people don't have a right to read your emails, but, you know, if it's in the commons, you might as well send a letter. You might as well, if you don't want people to have access to your information, you got to stick to paper. So when he's talking about this is a wonderful technology, Leo, and you're saying we're 15 years away from like 50% adoption, or are we 15 years away from starting this?
15 years away from the point where every car that you go to buy at a car dealer will be one with no steering wheel, no gas pedal, no brake. Okay. The Federal Highway Administration last year put out a several million dollars in support for Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona to actually start implementing what they call CV2X technology, which is the cellular vehicle to everything technology that this particular technology deals with. This is not a technology that is in the United States. This is a technology that has worldwide adoption, and countries like China, for example, are aggressive in deploying this. The Federal Highway Administration last year came out with a document that projected that once this is fully implemented, the crash rates and death rates, the deaths will drop to zero from right now. 34,000 people a year die in the United States in crashes. It'll drop to zero. The cars will also respond to cellular communication that comes from what we call today traffic lights. But instead of a red light and a yellow light and a green light, the actual signals will come out that tell the car it's time to start stopping or it's time to start to go. The car will know how many cars are in front of it, how much distance there is to within 4 inches. It's pretty powerful technology. And the dealers, the car manufacturers are actually starting to implement the onboard chips that are needed for cellular vehicle to everything technology. You need two things. You need roadway communication, so you have roadway units that send signals out, and then you have the cars that receive those signals. And when they receive the signal then will correspond to chipset things, for example, like automatic braking systems, steering, things like that. All of that is in place. It's now just a matter of how long it takes to roll out. The technology has been developed. And as AI progresses, so too will the advanced capabilities. In 2030, we have right now we have 5G technology, but the folks that basically put all of that together have a 10-year time frame so that in 2030 we'll go to 6G. In 2040 we'll go to 7Gs. When we go to 6G, the amount of data will be enormous. So you'll be able to actually control traffic without having participation by drivers. The same way you have right now in San Francisco and Phoenix, where you have taxis that are all self-driven. There's no driver. It's all there. And parents, of course, will have no problem with their 17-year-old going out for the night because they won't be driving. The car will be driving. And it's pretty massive. But the technology, when it comes, is going to be such a game changer because we won't need things like streetlights anymore. And all the energy that now is devoted to streetlights can be redirected to things like data centers, which are gobbling up energy like crazy. And 15 years from now, how many of us will have an electric vehicle that we want to charge in our garage overnight? That nighttime use of electricity back in the 30s, it was, well, the factories all closed down at 5 o'clock and everybody went home, but the generator still had to produce that electricity. And what are we going to do with it? Well, let's put up some street lights. So street lights were looked at as a way to use that energy that was basically just flowing around with no monetary recovery. And so what that made sense in 1930, today with competition for energy, we really should be taking down streetlights that are not essential. California,
I agree with that. Okay, before you've covered a ton of stuff there, Leo. Okay, we got to stop for a second because I have a couple questions. Okay, so I want you to take this with absolute what I'm going to say to you right now. Don't take it the wrong way, but that's a good sales pitch. Okay, that's a good sales pitch. It's also the best case scenario of the outcome. Have you guys looked at worst case scenarios? Have you guys looked at what were the worst thing that could happen if we do this?
The issue that has come up has to do with radiation and whether all of these signals will have any adverse effect on human health.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no science yet developed that shows that this is a problem any more than it is television signals and satellite signals and all the other kinds of waves that come through the system every day. Those telephone signals, from the television, et cetera, all of that. We live with that. So I'm not sure that the potential is there for there to be a problem, but there hasn't been any issue uncovered yet that shows that there is a problem here that needs to be addressed.
But we had a situation with one of our guests, Dr. Mario Mata, where he was alerting the lighting industry in 2017 to problems with LED lights, and he was actively suppressed by the lighting industry. And his message was not allowed to go out. So I'm just being pragmatic with you here. I agree with that vision, and I think all of the ROIs and the things that you've listed are potential outcomes of this happening. But what I've noticed is that whenever we change something, we tend to over focus on all the positive outcomes, and there isn't enough attention paid to some of the things that might go wrong. And I think we need to do as much dreaming about what might go wrong before we implement. so that we can actually implement it with success, Leo, and so that there isn't the problems that we had with LED. So everybody went wild. I mean, you got to remember back in 2015, 16, LEDs last forever, man. You're never going to have to change a light bulb. This is amazing. This is going to be the greatest thing you ever saw in the history of your life in terms of energy savings. And you know what happened? A big, like almost, I don't know, I'm not going to say debacle, but it almost is. All the light pollution you're trying to solve was caused by the same kind of story that, well, what could go wrong? So are there any, so the Illuminating Engineering Society was kind of pushed out of the way in lighting and other people moved into that space because the Illuminating Engineering Society was taking a long time to figure out what the right mix of LED should be. And so other organizations came in and took over. Are there any associations in this world that are volunteer charities that analyze this kind of stuff, that look at it from like 15 different perspectives and come up with standards or something? Is there a standards body in this arena?
There's not a standards body. The Dark Sky International was the first organization to recognize the problem with blue wavelength light that was caused by LEDs, where you had, in the very beginning, you had 6,000 Kelvin
Sure.
Correlated color temperature.
6,500.
Yeah, it was crazy, right?
When did Dark Sky figure that out? When was that?
Chris Monrad is a lighting engineer who has been on the Dark Sky board of directors. And when LEDs first came out, he came out with a science paper, on the adverse effects of blue wavelength light. And in the beginning, the lighting industry really didn't pay much attention to it. But two things happened. One, they realized that blue wavelength light is not pretty in the eyes of people that live in the area. So there was one place in California that actually put up, I think it was 4,500 Kelvin streetlights that were so adversely received that they took them all down and put them up with 3,000 Kelvin to reduce the amount of blue wavelength light. And as that time went on, the industry they use a phosphor coating now on LEDs to reduce the blue wavelength light. And what was at one point, say 7 years ago, 3,000 Kelvin was probably as low as you could get. You now have situations where they actually have 2,700, 2,200, and 2,000 Kelvin for special events like, let's say, park lighting. If you're going to have a lighting in a parking lot at a national park, maybe you want to have very low amount of blue wavelength light.
We advocate for that across the board. So
Yeah.
here on Restoring Darkness, we advocate for 2,200 or less everywhere in outdoor lighting. No exceptions. Maybe airports and prison yards.
The key is to get the lighting industry to make that offer so that if you are a lighting designer, you can pick the light fixture that looks just like you want it to look, and you have the selection of being able to pick that in a 2,000 or 2,200 Kelvin. Right now, you certainly can do 3,000. Many cases you can do 2,700, but as you fall below 2,700, your selection becomes fewer in terms of options to go to 2,000 or 2,200.
Yep, you're 100% correct on that. Leo, what's the reception? So you're kind of, I see maybe there should be a formation of like a consortium of various people in the space. So like Soft Lights Foundation could be part of the consortium like that. And, Dark Sky Connecticut and these other organizations that you've met. And maybe you could start thinking about some standards, like what actually constitutes this, turning off lights. What would be the benefits of that? And, kind of start, or maybe join the IES and help it there. But I also think there needs to be some kind of talk about the bad side of these radiation situations, of zero accidents. Yeah, I think that's the best case scenario for sure. I think there'll be lots of accidents. Maybe they'll be reduced by 80%. But I don't see an outcome where there's no accidents. You actually see an outcome where there's no accidents.
The Federal Highway Administration has set that as their goal. It doesn't say that goal will happen in 15 years, But as AI advances, as technology changes, there will come a time where if cars are controlled by cellular communication, there won't be crashes.
I'll bet you a year's wages that there'll always be crashes. Mark Baker, you're up, buddy.
So, Leo, you really have a lot of knowledge there. There's a wide range of things we could talk about. Let's talk about the Governor's Highway Safety Administration. They come out with a report, I think it's once a year, showing pedestrian deaths. And pedestrian deaths have skyrocketed at night only, not during the day, a little bit during the day, but at night. And I would attribute that to the introduction of LEDs because there's a perfect match to when this skyrocketing pedestrian deaths increased. So it could be not just LED headlights, but it could be LED street lights and LEDs at gas stations and flashing lights on emergency vehicles. In other words, there's glare everywhere, like when you drive in the city and nobody can see the pedestrian anymore. Do you have any information about that and how these automated cars might better protect pedestrians?
There is a whole section of the cellular vehicle to everything technology that deals with pedestrians and bicyclists. There will be a time where you will have small patches sewn into things like your backpacks for kids walking to school. That technology, there are standards bodies that have actually developed standards for detecting pedestrians, having crosswalks, for example. There's a whole debate about you got to light it up, right? Well, with this cellular vehicle to everything technology, those cars will be able to detect the pedestrians, they'll be able to detect the bicyclists, and you won't have the kind of problem that you have now where the only solution is more light, more light, more light. You won't have that.
Consider induction lighting again. TeslaLightingCo.com.
When I first got into this, I dreamt of what you are saying, that it felt to me that we don't need streetlights and we don't need headlights on cars really to be blasting us because other electromagnetic radiation would be detecting things, right? But I want to say that as I've gotten into this and now I have a lot of contacts, especially I have contacts with the groups that are working to protect us from radio frequency electromagnetic radiation, such as from cell phones and cell towers, Wi-Fi routers, etc. That there is quite a concern about the impacts of this electromagnetic radiation, especially in the radio frequency. And that this idea of electrosmog being everywhere, sort of replacing just the visible light, I believe it needs to be addressed. And in my work, I have found that the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Devices and Radiological Health, is mandated to do the work, to do these studies, to protect us. And you're probably aware of this, but the FCC is the only agency that is doing anything about setting standards for radio frequency radiation, and they haven't updated their standards since something like 1996. That's the last time they updated their standards. So things are much more powerful. There's far more of it. And one of our activities is to try and get the Food and Drug Administration to start doing these studies that are necessary. But it all ties together. So we have this conflict. I want it to be safe, and the idea of having all these sensors and all these things pinging us and stuff and figuring it out is great, except that we're humans and we're not robots, and we have tissues and we have cells in our bodies, and they're all affected by this. So this is something I would say the government should be looking at.
One of the things that we can do now is we can take a look at streetlight policy and go all the way back to the Federal Highway Administration, where they have a program in place that's funded by Congress that says that if you are a state DOT and you want to put roadway lighting on federal highways like interstate highways and things like that, that the federal government will reimburse you 100% for all the cost of installation and equipment for those streetlights. But at the same time, for 30 years, California DOT has had a policy of not lighting their freeways, except for those sections of the freeways where you can show that there were 3 times more crashes than on average. So, by and large, California freeways are not lit. And if they're not lit and people aren't basically driving off the cliff because of that, then why do we need to have these lights lit? And the problem that there is when the government says, we'll give you all your money back to your state DOT, the engineer at the state DOT looks at it from the perspective of, why should I really do a study on exactly where I need to put the lights, where I can put them everywhere? And if I do that, I get all my money back from the government. And on top of that, I don't have any exposure in terms of criticism that I put a light here but didn't put a light there. I put them everywhere, right? And it gets nuts because you have some situations where you have a 100-foot wide separation between, say, north and southbound with berm in there with no headlights coming at you. It's all dark. You don't need street lights in that situation, but they put them there because they're going to get paid back by the federal government because they got a program that's like a knee-jerk program instead of being judicious in where they spend their money and how they put the lights in. They just have a blanket policy that says, you put them in, we'll pay you back.
Man,
Yeah.
that is so perverse.
It's insane.
That is so that has to be that has to be funded by the lighting industry, I think. Like that's got to be a lobby in Washington, no? Is that a lobby that lobbies for that?
I've been a member of the roadway lighting committee that's part of the Illuminating Engineering Society for 12 years. And in getting to know who is on the committee, I would say about 2/3 of the members that vote have a direct financial interest in promoting street lighting. They are manufacturers' representatives. They are engineers with the lighting industry. And one proposal that I made to them was that we should really talk about alternatives to street lighting, like reflective striping and reflectors and other kinds of markings and things like that. And the answer was, we're here to tell people how to put a street light up when they've decided to do that. We're not here to tell them what else they can do. And the bottom line is it's all financial.
That's fair. Okay, but I'm just going to jump in on that because that's a fair response. But what I would say is that when you bring a stakeholder group like that together, you have to be there has to be some sort of declaration of interests, right? Like so that there's like you're going to have people that disagree on those committees, but we should be aware of what their interests are. Right?
Exactly.
You know, it's like that's a fair response from the lighting industry. Look, we're here. We build poles. We build lights. We do the lighting designs. We manufacture lights. We're not going to impugn the honor of these people on the show here because that's what their job is, right? But I think our community, the darkness community, the night restoration community, we have to fight our way to the table, and we have to force the lighting industry to become the lighting and darkness industry. You have to be both. Right? You can't be just the lighting industry.
And the problem is that very few people are aware of the financial bias that goes into deciding what kind of recommendations will be made for roadway lighting. The financial bias in terms of self-interest is a heavy influence.
So, that means that the committee needs to have more balance. It doesn't mean that, like if the lighting manufacturers are influencing it that heavily, they need to have an influence. They need a voice. They need to be at the table. Okay, I agree with that 100%. But if they if other people aren't showing up to vote, if the other side of the table is not there and putting their discussions forward and bringing things to the table on a regular basis and trying to communicate in formal manners with each other and ask for meetings with these manufacturers to say, look, this is a big problem, guys. we have to fix this in some way and come back to the table. If that other side isn't being advocated for, well, that's not really the problem of the lighting manufacturers. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense to you, Leo.
The big problem is that what we're advocating for is actually taking down streetlights and being very judicious, like California Department of Transportation, in terms of where they're placed. So that basically is saying that what we want to do is reduce the income of these companies that make streetlights. That's not going to fly with them in terms of them rolling back and saying, well, you got a point there. You know, they're going to do what they can to make sure that streetlights remain part of the business. And when I did that presentation that in Toronto with the Roadway Lighting Committee to show that connected vehicle technology was going to literally wipe out the need for street lighting on limited access highways, I will tell you that there were a lot of people there that weren't happy.
Yeah, that's okay. They're allowed not to be happy. You know, it's not the problem of America. What happens to lighting companies? That's not America's problem. That's the lighting company's problem, right? So if like, oh, I'm not happy because I'm okay, that's okay. Your unhappiness is not the problem of the people of America. It's not the problem. It's not our problem. So and that's okay. People are allowed to be mad. You can be mad. That's not my problem though. So I think we have to reestablish dialogue in our countries. I'm Canadian. We have to bring the right parties to the table, and we have to make sure everyone understands everybody else's interests when we're talking, right? So you're interested in selling as many streetlights as possible. Can I convince you that that's not what's best for America? Can I convince you of that?
Nobody does, but Michael, the companies don't care what's best for America. They just care
No,
about
I don't
profit.
believe that, Leo. Do you believe that, Leo, that the people that work at those companies, they don't care about what's best for America? I don't believe that. I think they
I don't
haven't.
think it's an all or nothing. I think that
Yes.
there could be a lot of people that do care,
Yeah.
but when they get into the caring, they care this much about, let's say, the social issue and the environment, but they care this much for their income and their livelihood
And they
and their
should.
ability and
And
the
they
ability
should.
to put food on the table for their
And they
wife and
should.
children.
And they
Yeah,
should.
but that's the reality.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, what I'm saying to you is that voice should not be silenced. That voice should not be discriminated against. That voice should be 100% at the table. But there should be other voices at the table that are in charge of the government and that say, okay, that's great that you want to have an amazing lighting company, but in America, this is how we're going to do things. And you have to survive in that environment. And, go get after. You know what? I'll tell you this, Leo, I'm not worried about big companies with rich directors and owners. They're going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, I know how much these people make. Okay. They've had a good run. They're doing good. They're going to have to respond to a different environment. And that's why businesses go bankrupt sometimes. Sometimes the purpose of a business has come to an end and it's now time to close the doors. Or maybe an entrepreneur can take over and think of something new to provide for people with his team. That's America.
And technology for V8, tapes and for phonographs. The technology changes.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, things that were big are now gone. And
Totally.
that's what will happen with streetlights. It's not going to happen in a few years. It's going to happen over the next 2 or 3 decades when lighting is not going to be anywhere near as important in the minds of government officials as it is today.
Well, let me add one extra twist on there. So cities are they're busy adding these poles because they're filling them with electronics. So they're putting things to detect, whatever's going on, to have cameras on there, to have sensors on there. So the smart city is actually a major part of, or at least it was, putting the poles. So one of the excuses of putting in LED streetlights was so that they could get the electronics and the networking cards and all that stuff into the poles. And now, so they can use all this technology. What do you think of that?
Well, you certainly can put up a pole without putting up a light.
Well,
You
that
know,
would be
you don't have
nice.
you don't have to put the light up, but if you're in a situation where you're a high crime district and you want to have cameras that depend on light, then you're probably going to have some degree of lighting. So it's not going to be an all or nothing thing. It
Mm.
won't be that street lighting goes to zero, but the amount of light that we have right now is 100 and I don't know 147,000 miles of lit uh, highways in the United States, and you just won't need that light. And when you
Mm.
get into things like in our own little town, I have a town that's about 15,000 people. You have streets that have cul-de-sacs, and at 10 o'clock at night, the sidewalk rolls up. No one is even driving a car. Forget walking, but the lights are on all night long. Why? It's just no
Right.
one ever thought about putting in controls or using, you know, different types of technologies that, and they are out there. And the Federal Highway Administration has actually done documentation on having reduced light at night, from say 11 o'clock at night till 5 or 6 in the morning. And the technology is there for you to be able to do that, but not many people do.
Oof. Well, folks, we're going to go to final thoughts for Leo in a second, but I just want to remind you that if you like this show, well, you could pay $10 for it, or $1, or $20, or $50, or something like that. You go to restoringdarkness.com, you click the donate link, and you can send that money right over to my pal Mark Baker, who is the hardest working guy in the night preservation movement. You can help him out. He's got a mountain in front of him, or you can donate to Restoring Darkness podcast. And this podcast is brought to you by the Soft Lights Foundation, Mark Baker, and the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. And so, yeah, and we want to remind you of TeslaLightingCo.com. Remember, there's another option out there that's not LED. It's not going to take over, but hey, maybe there's some applications for this stuff, all you lighting designers out there. Go to TeslaLightingCo.com, check out, look at the specs, look at it, see what you think. They have low Kelvin temperatures available as well. And great for ski hills and all this sort of stuff. He's got a whole line of fixtures there. And final thoughts, Leo Smith, what do you have left to say to the audience before we cut out?
Just to become active with your legislators about reducing light pollution, having the ability to even get the state government to start being more judicious in the way they use light at night.
You can make a difference, folks. You can fight City Hall. It's not hopeless. America's still an amazing country. Get your heads up, put your chins up, call your MP. Oh, no, that's Canada. Call your congressman, have a conversation with them, write them a letter. Talk to them about this issue. Say, look, we want less light pollution. I don't know how you do it. You're the government, right? I'm telling you, I'm not getting paid here. I'm just your local citizen, and I'm letting you know that light pollution is an issue for me. There, bye. And then you can let them go. Just tell them that. Write it in a letter. Light pollution is an issue for me, and I vote every election. Just send that off. You just have to be really quick. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to write it. You don't have to send them a report. You just have to tell them that this issue is important to you. And we love all you guys out there and gals out there that listen to Restoring Darkness. We appreciate you. Bye for now.